Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video we'll be talking about a large, powerful autumn storm that is now increasingly likely across the northern United States and southern Canada. This system will be mainly a rainmaker as it is going to be occurring in the first few days of September, but there will be a chance for snow. The models are still pretty inconsistent on where exactly that snowfall threat will reside, but it does look like there will be some areas picking up some snow. So yes, definitely early. Following this system, there will be a very large cold blast of air followed by the very strong cold front from that system. So there will be quite a bit of activity. Even if you don't get the rain from the system, you will probably get at least hit by some of that cold air following the storm. So let's jump right into it. So I want to start off by looking at the European model, the ECMWF. Now, if you recall the last few videos, I've been talking about how the GFS has been outperforming the European, at least with this recent cool down we had. Now it seems that the European is doing just as good of a job as the GFS, which is good. I was getting a little concerned there. The European usually is considered the better of the two models, but recently it was kind of falling behind. So thankfully that has seemed to been reversed. So as I take a look at this, notice that right now we have various areas of activity across the United States, right? So we have precipitation that is developing across the west from the monsoons. We have an area of heavy rain across Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. And as I put this forward, do note that we see a cold front across the Great Lakes that is going to cause some very strong winds across a good portion of Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. There's beach hazard statements up for that. Not a strong system or even a cold front, but enough to really stir the waves up. And as I put this into the future, notice that we have a pretty dry pattern taking place across the central United States as we see almost a secondary reinforcing shot of cool air. However, things rapidly start changing as I get towards the weekend. Sunday into Monday and Tuesday, we see a system developing across the northern United States, dropping out ahead of a really powerful cold front and cold blast of air to the north. And with that, you could see we have showers and storms beginning to develop across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, into Ontario. Looking still at the European model, but the temperature anomalies around that Monday, Tuesday timeframe of next week. And I wanted to focus in on this because I want to show you that out ahead of this system, I haven't shown you the storm yet, and I will, but I want you to guys understand the features and the ingredients that are going into the system and why it's going to be a pretty powerful storm. So we've been dealing with a lot of cool air across the United States, right? I'm sure you felt it. It seems like someone turned the air conditioning down on outside. It's been very nice, but across southern Canada and extreme northern United States, it has not been the same story, or it has, but it's going to quickly switch if it hasn't already, and it's going to develop into a strong heat wave across those areas into this upcoming weekend. You can see Monday, Sunday, we have very strong colors of orange and red indicating strongly above average temperatures. But on the backside of this, we have another cool air mass, which you can see begins to show itself right there. So what we have is very warm air on the eastern side of this and southern side, a little bit of cool air further south, and then another cold shot of air from the north, which invites the jet stream to do its thing by superpowering the storm. Now we're back looking at the European model precipitation outlook, which is what I was showing you at the beginning. And given the fact that now we know what the temperatures are going to be like, we can see how this system and why it quickly explodes across the northern United States. You may still not be seeing it at this point, and you may be wondering, where is the storm? Why is it not showing up? And I'll show you in just a second. As I put this forward into Sunday time frame and into Monday of next week, so this is now September 1st, the start of the new month, we again start seeing that precipitation develop out ahead of that cold front of a very strong cold air mass, but very far towards the north. And you can see, boom, right there, within a few frames, by Tuesday and Wednesday, we see a low pressure kickoff. It's digging to the south pretty quickly, and behind it we have cold air. Now again, we still have stubborn cold air to the south and also low pressure here, and that's essentially veering these winds to the north and not allowing this system to just blast off in a cold front fashion to the south and east. You can see that it starts developing into a storm, and we could tell that because here's that warm front, here's that cold front, and then here is that comma-shaped precipitation head. Some of the models are showing that this could turn into snow. The European specifically is showing a little bit. You can see that little pink color right there. Depending on how strong the system gets and how strong that cold air is behind it will determine how much of that precipitation is in the form of snow. Now notice that this again, in terms of precipitation, it's not a potentially massive rainmaker. It does drag a pretty powerful cold front along with it, so that's definitely going to instigate some showers and activities of that nature. But notice that the low pressure continues dropping. It's at 1,000 millibars, 996 millibars. That cold front begins to take on a almost a backward C, kind of like a parentheses, and that indicates a pretty strong winds behind it, blowing this kind of like a derecho when you have a thunderstorm system and it starts bowing, right? We have a bowing thunderstorm. The winds are taking that precipitation and blowing it very far out, which gives it that bowing appearance. We have now that, but with this cold front, and it's on a larger scale. So there's going to be strong winds with this in the upper levels, which is also why there's so much cold air that filters in behind this system. And notice that this thing continues to intensify. It is 995 millibars, has a cold front, powerful cold front behind it, and it really develops into a large system in terms of the size, and it peaks at around 993 millibars of low pressure, which is, again, pretty strong, and it continues strengthening as it moves off into Quebec. So again, when I said it peaked as in a 991, I meant to say that across really any areas that I talk about, that's going to be the strongest it's going to be. If you know, I reported for Greenland, where this thing is headed for later, I would be saying that this thing is only strengthening, because it does. And you can see it drags a lot of precipitation and completely changes the flow of the United States because of this massive system. Now again, how much of this will actually be snow remains to be seen. Some models show quite a bit of it. Some models show quite almost nothing, like the European current one I'm showing you. It doesn't show much here. Look at the precipitation, the QPF, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that stands for Quantitative Precipitation Forecast. This is the European model, so the same model I showed you. And this is the forecast of the precipitation prior to the storm. So this is Monday of next week. This is how much precipitation will fall prior to that system. So again, in the short range, activity is mainly going to be across Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, through the plain states and into the southern United States, as that monsoon moisture gets swept eastward and then to the south. And then we do have a little bit of that precipitation from this current cold front that is passing over the Great Lakes, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. That will be, again, the next 2 to 3 days, and once that passes, it will be pretty much gone and out of here very quickly. Now, as I put this forward into Tuesday, you can see that precipitation developing across Manitoba and Saskatchewan into Ontario and Quebec. Again, where this system stalls out, especially potentially across western Ontario, there could be quite a bit of rainfall, a widespread swath potentially of 1 to 2 inches of precipitation, and again, it's occurring across areas that don't have any previous precipitation under it. So all of this that we see popping up here, 1-2 inches, that's from that system. As it begins to race and intensify further east, the amounts are a little bit less and a bit more scattered, say especially across the south into the portions of the northern United States. So south meaning relative to the storm center. We see potentially up to an inch of rain across some of these areas. There could be even some lake enhancement because of how cold this air will be behind it. Look at that though, Ontario, potentially some areas here really picking up a lot of rain where that system stalls out, and again, potentially some snowfall. But yeah, you can see it definitely colors this map in a lot of different colors, indicative of how much moisture this thing will have further up north, and just how powerful and slow moving this thing may become. So now let's take a look at a different model. This is the GFS, Global Forecasting System, and at the beginning, the GFS was the one that picked up better this system. It picked it up better. It picked it up a little earlier on, further out. And now it seems that the GFS and the European are more or less equal with how well they show it. They both show it in their own varieties of way. Which one will it exactly be remains to be seen. Right now I'm leaning a little bit more towards the European model. I know the GFS has been outdone in my opinion right now. Currently with this system, it has shown more consistency, but that doesn't mean that some things can't change. You know, with the GFS maybe showing a trend that starts to emanate itself on the European or vice versa. And right now, again, in the short term, we are looking, by the way, here in this red color is how much hours out from the future as of recording this video on August 27th we are. And as I put this forward, the hours will accumulate, and this gives you the date and time. So if you're wondering, when is this? Right there, you can look. So again, as we go into Thursday and into Friday of this week, the main showers and main activity is going to be across the western or eastern front range of the Rockies, potentially New Mexico, Arizona, southern areas of those states, into portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the south. And again, that little low pressure on the edge of this high pressure that is going to be bringing a cold front across the Great Lakes, leading to hazardous beach conditions and swimming conditions for those folks that are participating in that. Notice that as I put this forward, we see the monsoons continue really across the front range of the Rockies now, not as far into Utah or Nevada or Arizona or even California as we've seen. And we do see that system to the north beginning to develop across Sunday and into Monday. The difference between the GFS and the European model is the GFS shows the initial storm way further up north. It shows it north of where even, so the European shows the center of it somewhere around here around this time. The GFS shows it almost a few hundred miles to the north, or even more in kilometers if you want to use that metric, and it's not even present on this map that we have. What we do though with the GFS that's a little different is that it develops a very powerful cold front similar to the European, but because it's so further north, all the ingredients to this cold front, because the initial system is further north, are kind of left hanging, and it allows itself to develop into a new storm further south. So the GFS again kind of shows the initial storm that the European shows, just way further north across Ontario and Quebec, really across Hudson Bay, I should say, draping that cold front across Quebec and Ontario, mainly Ontario here. And then it begins, that cold front begins to develop in a system of its own. This isn't rare. We see this pretty often with winter storms, as ones that are very far north, a cold front turns into a system of its own. But again, for fall, this is pretty unusual, especially with what we've been seeing. And right now, this is definitely the first big system of the season to do this. Again, assuming it will happen. So because this is further south, and that system, parent system, is further north, it has more cold air that is pumped at this point further south. So the GFS, by the time it's developing this system over Sault Ste. Marie roughly by Wednesday of next week, it has a lot more cold air to work with, and what that allows it to do is drop quite a bit more snow with that system. Notice it has that cold front here, that warm front here, and then on the back side of it we have those blue colors indicating we have snow falling, and it could fall pretty heavily. This system, again, as you saw based on the European precipitation totals, is loaded with moisture and loaded with precipitation, right? And if it falls in form of snow, it will lay down quite a bit. Notice that the system itself doesn't intensify as significantly as the European one, and that's because it's a secondary system. It's one that developed off the cold front. Still a powerful one, and again, it does have more snowfall. Interestingly, the GFS does bring a second little system immediately after that, almost like a Alberta Clipper form. Now if you were to take a look at the temperatures, I want to show you the GFS first, and then I'll show you the European. I briefly showed you the European prior to the storm, but then I want to show you the European model after the system. So the GFS, again, because it develops two systems, the first system further up north, it allows a lot more cold air to settle in, which we could see by these colors, by the time it's producing potentially snow, and it develops into a larger system that allows it to produce snow across areas that are already cold. Look at some of these colors. They're not even blue. They are purple. You could argue this is almost a pink color. These anomalies during the day are gonna be cold. We are looking at 40s and 50s during the day. During the nighttime, some of these temperatures will get down into freezing for actually a good portion of the Midwest. Now again, whether or not this unfolds this way remains to be seen. I am leaning towards the European model slightly more, but even the European model does show cold temperatures. And just look at this blast. This will really feel like a cold, proper fall blast of air. Notice that across the west in this meantime, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and into portions of British Columbia and Alberta, Canada, you guys will be baking in heat. You will be looking at very, very warm temperatures. It's going to be actually silly if you take a look at the 2-meter temperature shaded map. You will be seeing higher temperatures across northern and central British Columbia and into Alberta than potentially even Kentucky, Tennessee. Honestly, look at that, even Texas or New Mexico because of the monsoon rain. So again, a pretty incredible contrast that we could be developing there. And the GFS maintains that cool air for a while as that flow remains from the northwest to the southeast, and you can see it introduces more blasts of cool air. There's definitely some warm air mixing in, but it's not any prolonged massive heat waves. So to finish this video off, I want to briefly take a look at the predicted snowfall accumulations from the GFS model. I really will be only looking at the GFS because it is the only model of the two that I showed you that is showing potentially snow across any of these areas of the forecasting area. Note that the GFS shows quite a bit of heavy snow with that system. Again, it's going to be a moisture loaded system because of how early it is occurring, and even though it is pretty far north, filled with moisture, which allows any of this cold air to be pretty saturated with moisture, even though it is cold enough for it to produce snow. Note that we have 17 inches apparently by some of these highest readings according to the GFS here. Again, this is not my actual forecast. I'm just giving you what the GFS shows here. This is assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. With a system like that, it will definitely be lower because it's heavy wet snow. Again, assuming it occurs with that snowfall, that the confidence is very low on that. And in a wider swath of snow, potentially 1 to 4 inches across many of these areas. With that being said, that is basically it for today's video. I'll definitely keep you guys updated as the models do their best with this system. And for now, that's all I have for you. I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya. Bye.